Hi everyone, this is Anson from Tahusa.co. So lately I've been shooting with a Voigtlander Nikkor 50mm f1.0 spherical lens. And I also borrowed another one, which is the famous Leica Reflx 0.95 spherical lens. And also I'm moving on to testing them on film, black and white film, color negative film, as well as positive films. So if I have the results and also findings about how these lenses behave, I'll put them on my website. And also I'm going to make another video about these two lenses on my channel. So subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for further updates. Before I talk about this lens, if you have just started using film or would like to understand more about film photography, I would like you to check out the link below. I'm offering a free film photography course for everyone who is interested to understand more about the different film types and tips about using them. Also, I have another course which is the lens inspection guide, with a complete step-by-step checklist for you to understand what kind of problems these lenses would have, so that you know what you are paying for, and eventually to help you to save money. Check out my website if you haven't. There are lens reviews, analog film reviews, as well as photography tips to help everyone improve together. Subscribe to get latest updates so that you don't miss out the next post I'm going to publish. So in this video I'm going to talk about this lens, which is the Nikkor 50mm f1.1 lens. And it was designed for Nikon rangefinder cameras at the time. So how I found this lens, I think roughly about 10 years ago, I saw this lens on a forum. At that point of time, I was hunting for an ultra fast lens, and Reflx was the holy grail for everyone. But I saw this Nikkor lens with such a great depth of field and interesting bokeh. But of course, there are some drawbacks about this lens. I'm going to explain later, but it was briefly about the separations and also, the conversion to be able to use these two lenses on a Leica rangefinder camera. So you might be curious, there are actually two versions. They are actually the same, they're optically the same. In fact, they're designed differently because of the improvements. I'm going to talk about it later. So I spent the entire time searching for sample photos. Unfortunately, there wasn't too much information on the internet. But I came across a guy called Nathan. And Nathan, his photos was impressive. At first I thought the lens was just a collector item, but I spent more than a year plus now shooting with it, and I think it's time to share with everyone about this gorgeous lens. So this lens was introduced by Nippon Kogaku, Tokyo, so later renamed to Nikon, in 1956. So the first fastest lens below aperture value of 1.2 was the Zunow 50mm f1.1 lens. I've tried that lens. If you are interested to know more about that lens, I'm going to put a link below you can check out. The character of that lens, the Zunow, and this Nikon is entirely different. So this Nikkor became the second fastest lens below aperture value of 1.2 in the world. I think at the time many companies in that period tried to develop fast lens, and the competition began to develop the fastest or the world first ever. So some of you might know about the Nikkor, a famous one, which is the 35mm f1.8 lens. And this Nikkor lens was designed by the right-hand man, who also designed the signature 35mm f1.8 lens. So at the time, you can imagine it was dominated by two big names, which is Leica and Contax. So Nikon want to join the game, so they need to develop something without replicating these two iconic cameras. So they came up with the Nikon Rangefinder S cameras. Personally, I've only held these cameras once or twice. My impression was that it is a very solid build camera, but the focusing patch is quite dim and sometimes hard to focus. The company came up with the Nikon S, and then later released the improved version, which is the S2 and also the SP for professional. So in here I have two different versions. One is called internal mount version, and this one is the external mount versions. There are in total 3 different versions for this Nikkor 50mm f1.1 lens. The internal mount versions, there are in total 1,500 units made, and the external mount, there are 1,800 made. And the third one, which is the very rare Leica thread mount versions, the LTM, which was known to be only having 200 copies made. So you might ask, what are the difference between these two lenses? They are actually identical in optical design and performance. So this one is the internal versions, meaning that you insert this lens on Nikkor rangefinder cameras, and this part, the last part of that of the lens, attached to the mount on a Nikkor rangefinder camera, and you turn this lens to do the focusing. But the problem is, it is front weighted, it is heavy, and causing some bending on the Nikkor rangefinder camera, and maybe it will damage the camera and also bend the lens so that it cannot focus correctly. So later on, Nikon improved the design with an external mount, so the focusing unit is surround the whole lens, so the mount actually mount outside of the rangefinder camera to make it more secured, solid, and easier to use. And also, the focusing unit is directly on this lens body. So there are major 2 factors that I like this lens very much. The first one is the sharpness. So I've tried this lens for quite some time, and at f1.1 aperture, I think this lens it has the best sharpness across other Japanese lens in that period of time. It performs really well with film, especially positive film, slide film, and black and white film all achieve a very good sharpness at wide open. The second thing that I like it is because of its bokeh. So it has swirl bokeh. Some of you might wonder how spinning it would be. So normally I don't really like super spinny bokeh, but this one I think is acceptable. It has some iconic rugby shape bokeh surrounding the side of the depth of field. Another difference that I think, comparing with the iconic Canon 0.95 and also the 50mm f1.2 lens, is that Nikon offers very good richness of sharpness and contrast, and the color is more natural than the Canon. So I've tried the Canon before, and it gives more pale and lower in contrast, especially when you shoot at wide open. But this Nikon, if you shoot it at wide open or even stop down to different apertures, it gives you very good resolutions and color contrast. So this lens takes a 62mm filter thread. But something that you have to note about is you cannot directly put on a filter, otherwise the center of that filter will be kissing the front element. So this is something that you want to avoid without damaging the front element. The lenses is actually gigantic and it's very nice. It looks peculiar. I don't think it's practical at all. But finding an original copy of that lens hood is extremely expensive and hard to find. So I actually got mine from Photopia, Hong Kong, and they have some replica from Nikon Historical Society, and that one is in metal and it feels absolutely amazing. So there are 3 types of adapters to be used on a Leica rangefinder cameras. So the first one is called the Orion adapter. I recently saw one on Rangefinder forum, but it is gone for minutes or hours. So which means that you only have 2 other options, because the Orion is already discontinued and super rare to find in the market. So you have the amedeo. Correct me if I'm wrong about the pronunciations, but amedeo adapters, there are 2 versions there is one for internal mount cameras, which is you're seeing right now. But the good thing about this adapter is that you can focus down to 0.65 meter. In another normal amedeo adapter, you can only focus down to 1 meter. So that's the difference for these two adapter. But the internal mount versions has to be adapted on the internal mount Nikon lens. But the another versions you can use on both internal and external mount. But using these adapters requires some calibrations, and you need some specialists to help you adjust the focusing. So I read a thread about using this amedeo adapter on Leica rangefinder cameras, and I messaged John. So thank you, John, for answering me these questions, because you cannot directly use these adapters on these two lenses. It required calibrations. So I found someone in Hong Kong and he does the job for me. In case if any one of you want to mount this lens on the Leica rangefinder, shoot me a DM or message me. I can help you to arrange that. So I've talked about the good things about this lens, how great the bokeh character. I would say this lens is wild compared with Noctilux. Noctilux is kind of a very good in character lens. You can use every day, every time. It gives you consistent result. But this lens is more like a wild beast. Except the good thing about this lens, there are major two downside. The first one is the aperture blade. Only turn the aperture blades slowly. If you happen to have a chance to play with your friends, Nikkor, try to turn them slowly. You don't want to damage the aperture blades because it is impossible to find the aperture blades now. Some told me that they can actually remake the blades, but I don't know how much it will cost you. So whenever you handle this lens, the first thing is turn the aperture blade slowly and carefully. If you feel there's any resistance about turning these aperture, stop at a point of time, or expand the aperture back to the original position. The second drawback about this lens is the separation. So this lens is very common to have lens separation, meaning that so optically these two glass elements stick together with a glue, and that glue, because of time, it deteriorates and causing separate from each other. So if you don't know much about separations or other problems that these lenses, especially vintage lenses, has, you can check out my course. I offer a step-by-step guide for you to identify what are the problems in these vintage old lenses, such as haze, fungus, separations, with photos to help you identify it, and obviously to help you to save money. So some of the images that you saw actually shot with a Reflx Lab 800T. If you are interested with this film, I would say this film is actually kind of like 90 to 99% similar to Cinestill, but offering kind of like a fracture of that price. Check out my website, and I'm selling it in my shop right now. I think overall I enjoy using this lens. It has a very big character, meaning that it is sometimes hard to control, but it gives you very nice portrait. If you are looking for interesting bokeh, meaning a depth of field that is very different from a normal Leica lens, then probably you want to try this Nikon lens. It is rare in the market, but I think this lens is underestimated. If you ask me whether I would like to use this lens or a Noctilux, probably I would say a Nikkor 50mm f1.1 for strong character portraits. It is good for street photography, especially at night, and it creates mood like the 80s. And if you use some film such as Venus 800 or some Cinestill films or the Reflx Lab that I mentioned, it gives you very nice rendition, and it recreates the mood from the 80s. I think this lens is a lens that I would strongly recommend everyone to try it. If you have a chance to handle this, be careful of the aperture blade. If you have a chance to try this lens, like what I said, be careful to handle the aperture blade and turn it slowly. I think you will enjoy using this lens. So if you are interested to know more about lenses or gears, feel free to comment below or send me an email. I'm happy to answer you. Also, if you know more about these lenses, such as the Nikkor lenses that I mentioned in this video, let me know. I would like to, fine-tune the contents that I shared online in a blog or even in this video so that everyone can know more about this lens. So comment below if you have any feedbacks about this video. Let me know so that I can improve in my next video, because I want to improve and share better contents for everyone on YouTube channel and also on my website. If you like this video, give me a like, share it to your friend, consider subscribe this channel so that you don't miss any future contents, and also subscribe to my website because I'm making regular contents about lens reviews, gears reviews, cameras, film, etc. So stay tuned about my upcoming updates on my website. I hope everyone enjoyed this video. I'll see you next time.